And hello, yes, I'm a live person, believe it or not, for another day. Thank God. Hello, everybody. Really glad to see you here. We've got a really good crowd. Obviously, I knew this subject matter would be a magnet for many of you. Uh, James with the Washington Assembly, welcome. I'm going to be wanting to hear from you Assembly people here in just a little bit. So I know you guys got a lot going on along these lines that we're going to be talking about, but I'm going to offer some insights that I guess representative of my own personal experience. And for those of you that know me, I have a tendency to do things a little bit differently once in a while. Maybe that's why I don't fit into my family anymore. I'm sure many of you understand that comment. So yeah, what I want to do tonight is basically just have a discussion. I'm not going to have any kind of formal presentation. I'm not going to get into any technicalities, but I want to just talk about some concepts that you maybe haven't thought of in your studies that might add to your perspectives on what you're doing and how you do things. Hopefully, I mean, that's the goal. We don't sit here and just talk for the sake of talking. I'm a practical guy. I want to get results. So whatever we do, we need to be results oriented, right? There's so much information. There's so many distractions. There's so much you can be doing with your time. It's just really easy to get off track, get off of your goals, get off of your purpose, and start chasing shiny objects out there, right? So we want to avoid that and be as productive as we possibly can. So what I'm going to do tonight, I want to share some of my experience with you, some of my personal insights, some hopefully words of wisdom, some guidance, just to kind of lay the foundation, the framework for our discussion. And then I hope that we have a very lively discussion with some of you that are doing some things so we can find out what you're doing. You might want to correct me in some of the things that I have to say. We are, after all, human. And unlike a lot of people, a lot of people are frozen in fear and they're just stuck in inaction because they don't feel like they know enough, or they're good enough, or they're big enough, or strong enough, and they're just frozen. They're not willing to do anything. And to accomplish things in life, you have to take bold action. Bold action. A lot of times, really, when you don't even know what the hell you're doing. Okay? And that's not a bad thing. You've heard the phrase, stumble forward. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. I heard Denzel Washington give a commencement speech to a group of college grads, and he says the key to success is to fail a lot, because that means you're doing something, right? So we have to get over this fear thing, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go, okay? So that being said, looks like we've got everything in order here. Here's what we want to do. All right, as I mentioned, just kind of have a casual discussion. I've got a few notes I'm going to refer to and make sure I hit on a few key points. But like I said, this is not an educational training session focused so much on law or any specifics or case histories. There's plenty of that out there. You've seen it, you've read it. We don't need to rehash all that, okay? We want to add to that in kind of a fun way, all right? So in fact, in terms of specifics in the email that you got about tonight, you've got a link to my video workshop. It's almost 2.5 hours worth of specifics and research for you. So you've got that already if you need it or want it. All right, there's so much information out there, and I know a lot of you have been studying it for probably, in many cases, a long time. So anyway, as I mentioned, what I've been doing this since the 90s, all right? And what I started doing at that time, many of the processes and resources that you have now were not available. Okay, so I kind of had my own do-it-yourself method that I was picking up from other people and bits and pieces, and you know, these are some of the things which really aren't often discussed or brought out, if they are at all. You know, so legal status. You know, the first thing I'd like to say about legal status is that it's not accomplished by paperwork. Okay. Too many people think that their paperwork proves their status. And in my opinion, and some of you might want to correct me, but in my opinion, this is completely wrong. And I'll explain why. Okay. There's an old saying, you probably heard it, that a jury of slaves will never let a free man go. Think about it. If you're trying to convince a jury that you're not subject to the same laws that they are, and you've got a jury of government and corporate employees, what do you think your chances really are of having them agree with you? Even if the facts are on your side. And we all know facts don't mean a hill of beans in the courts anymore, right? So when you're in front of a judge or an arrogant, potentially violent police officer, do you think they give a rat's ass what your paperwork says? I mean, let's be practical. Okay, we need to be practical, people. All right, we gotta get out of the mythology, take our head out of the clouds, put our feet on the ground, and get real. All right. So once the people that are operating in the system, once they know what your opinion is, we'll call it your opinion, all right, on what your status is, that they're more likely to simply double down and really put the clamps on you. Oh, I'm going to teach this guy a thing or two, right? And some of you, I'm sure, have had experiences to confirm that. All right. So, for example, I remember in the 90s when I got started in all this, the common law court movement was going strong. The Montana freemen were lighting fires in the brains of free-minded people all across the country. They were holding classes up in their ranch in Montana that was ultimately raided by the feds. And I was up there twice. And we actually held, our group in the Denver area actually held a common law court in the city council chambers of a small town just outside of Denver. And we had a sheriff's deputy attend with us to help us keep the peace. We had a very compliant and constitutional sheriff. He lent us one of his deputies to come and help keep the peace. We had actors from the state who were at the time building cases against me and others who were there to see what was going on. Okay, this was a bold move. We made it very public. We made a publication in the newspaper that this court was going to be held, and we were doing quiet titles, doing quiet title to ourselves at the time, establishing quiet title over our bodies and AKA persons for the record. And interestingly enough, one of the county prosecutors who was in attendance simply out of curiosity or perhaps out of duty, his boss said, probably told him, hey, you need to go down and see what's going on down there, see what these guys are up to. But anyway, one of the county prosecutors said afterwards, says, hey, you know, these guys really know what they're doing. And if I ever had an issue, I'd like to bring it to this court. This was a county prosecutor working for the state. All right. So, I mean, that's a bold action. And most of us had a good idea of what we were doing and what we wanted to do. but none of us had ever done it before, right? So there's a first time for everything. So make a note of that point, that bold action is required, and you don't have to have all the answers and have everything perfect and everything in place to take action. All right, that's the one point I want to make. You got to get rid of that fear and stumble forward. So, at that time, there was a big push for a 10th Amendment Convention of the States. And a lot of work was being done to get that organized, to create some constitutional amendments. And it appeared at that time, there's a lot of activity. The Montana Freemen, the Common Law Court movement, the Convention of the States. I mean, there was a lot going on. And the actors for the state were getting kind of nervous. And so what did they do? Well, the state associations of judges took this so seriously that they held conventions and they had big meetings. And a lot of the judges and legal people and AGs and those kind of people had conferences. And they actually put together a white paper on how to combat this sovereign freeman movement. They were actually literally writing books about this. What are we going to do to stop this? Okay, so they get together and they have strategies on how to deal with people who actually think they're free. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. So let's go back to my statement that status is not accomplished by paperwork. All right. Some of you are not going to like this, but I'm going to say that when most people file paperwork saying, hey, I'm an American national, I'm a state citizen, or whatever designation that you're assuming at that time, most people don't even think about it. But the fact of the matter is they're living a lie. And I'll explain that. All right, you're attempting to lead the government and the outside world to believe in one thing, when in fact, you're not living up to those standards, okay? Because you're still living your life entirely as a citizen and a resident. So you've still got a long list of proofs, of evidence that the government can use to ignore your papers, whatever you filed. And they continue to claim jurisdiction over you, okay? So all I'm saying is that filing a declaratory statement is not enough. It's a good first step, but it's not enough. Okay, so let me show you, let me illustrate this point by asking a few questions to those of you who have filed similar papers. And I have myself, okay? So in fact, I've been at this for a while, and I've got filings 6 ways from Sunday. I'll talk about a little bit of that in a few minutes, okay? So you filed your declaration of status, right? Now, do you have bank accounts in your name? Look at the bank account opening agreement. Did you ever really read that closely? You know, it's full of admissions and confessions that are contrary to the declaration that you filed. And you're benefiting from FDIC insurance, which is a federal benefit. So long as you have federal benefits, you've got some kind of return obligation. Those benefits are only available to who? People under the federal jurisdiction. So the bank account, I mean, I could rest my case right there, but let's continue. Okay. Do you ever cash checks at your local supermarket? If you do, chances are you've registered some kind of an account there, gave them information about yourself, name, address, phone number, banking information, whatever. And in the process of doing so, again, you've made certain admissions and confessions. And I have experience with that. In my felony case, they were trying to prove to the jury that my name, Mark Emery, was a false and fictitious name. The charges were criminal impersonation. And to this day, you know, people are telling the joke in Colorado, saying that, oh my God, here comes Mark, put the children inside. He's likely to impersonate himself again right in public. So anyway, that aside, so they were trying to establish that I was using this false and fictitious name, Mark Emery, when in fact, and other times I was using my family name, all right, instead of my second name. So they actually brought an employee from the local supermarket chain as a special witness in my case to testify to the details surrounding my account with the supermarket and my check cashing. Okay, so don't put anything past them. I've had that experience. All right, next, do you receive mail at home? All right, most of you probably do. Well, that connects your name to a street or other enumerated address within the municipality, which is basically upon the ship of that municipal corporation. Okay, that's a no-brainer for establishing that you are a resident. All right, so if you're ever standing in front of the judge, all they need to do is find someone where you've got an account and you've given your name and address. Oh, well, you're a resident. If you're a resident, you're subject. We don't care about what else you filed, what you say, you know, that's a hook. Your name and address, receiving mail at home. All right. Let me give you a story with that. At the time I was back in the 90s, I was married in the early 90s. And my wife had a Mercedes that she was leasing to a group of attorneys. And these attorneys just, the contract was up and they didn't want to turn the car back to her. So they were fabricating false charges against her to try and muddy up the waters enough to use that as leverage to get her just to let them keep the car. You know how that works. Just create enough pain and say, okay, well, we'll make the pain go away if you do what we want. All right, so they were trying to serve her through the mail and present all kind of presentments through the mail. And at the time, we were making visits to Costa Rica. And so we established a mail drop in Costa Rica. You might want to do this next time you're on vacation in the Bahamas or somewhere. Set up a mail drop and we put a forwarding order at the post office. And so all mail would be forwarded to our mail drop in Costa Rica, which then could send it to us in batches, you know, if we needed it. Oftentimes they'd tell us what we have and if we wanted to receive it or not. So we'd know whether we want to incur the FedEx charge or not. So anyway, long story short, once the attorneys realized that her mail was being forwarded to Costa Rica, they said, oh crap, you know, she's moved out of the country. This isn't going to work. So they dropped all their shenanigans. All right. But if you receive mail at home, all right, that's a hook. If you've got a mail slot on your front porch or a mailbox, take it down. Have your mail sent somewhere else, not to your home. All right. That establishes you as a resident. All right. You've got health club memberships, electric bills, magazine subscriptions, online accounts that match your name to a physical street address. All right, these are all hooks that will override whatever it is that you filed. Okay, do you work for a corporate employer? Do you work for the government? You know, if so, how many federal and state forms have you signed to comply with the requirements for that job? You've got withholding forms. You admit to being a U.S. citizen. You've got insurance forms, you know, that's been federalized. You've got withholding forms just to have the job. That's all on the record. It's easy to get. And you want to say that you're not subject, but yet you're receiving all these federal benefits? Okay, how about your car? Is your car registered to your name? Surely it's registered to the state. All right. The state, by virtue of having that registration on your automobile, issues a certificate of title. That certificate of title is very misleading, that name. It's not a title. Many of you know. The certificate of title is nothing more than title insurance. You're receiving the benefit of the state protecting the ownership of your car, supposedly. All right, but you're receiving a benefit from the state. You've got a contract with the state. You're directly linked to the state. Again, another hook that's in you. All right, how about your passport? You know, if you like to travel, you've got a passport. When you signed that application, what did you sign it as? You signed it as a U.S. citizen. All right, I know of a case where someone who thought they were sovereign or state citizen, state national, non-U.S. citizen, had an issue with the IRS. I mean, no more need to be said right there. But the prosecutor, when the issue came up, got a copy of their passport and started waving it around in the courtroom saying, oh, you've got this U.S. passport. So when it's convenient, you don't want to be a U.S. citizen, but when it is convenient, you want to use your U.S. passport and then be a U.S. citizen. So which is it? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. All right. Let that case be a lesson for all of us. Okay, so if you're standing in front of a judge, they're looking for these things. These are all hooks. These are all proofs. This is all evidence that you are a resident. All right. A resident. What is a resident? Break that word up. Words have meaning. Words have power. We can speak things into existence. Some of you who are a little more spiritually advanced understand that. I'd love to talk about that, but we don't have time tonight. So a resident, what is that? Break the word up. Res. Res is Latin, and it means the thing. Res is the thing. What's ident? It's the root for identify, identified, or identification. So when you combine the thing identified, resident, what is that? It's the thing identified as one of ours. You know, I said in my email, I brought up the issue. Jesus's words, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. Okay, well, what is Caesar's? Where does his jurisdiction begin? Where does it end? Okay, where does he have authority? And we all know that our entire system is based on commerce, right? Everything is based on commerce. We're living in a land of commercial law, in admiralty. So that being the case, we've got to simply be aware of what that means. A resident who's doing business in the state of Ohio, for example, is one who is subject to Caesar. Okay, first of all, if you're residing, that's catch number one, or doing business in the state of Ohio, that's catch number two. All right, let me give you a story to go along with that. Personal experience. All right, I was living in Oklahoma at the time. Just bought for cash a Pontiac transport van. Very nice van. I was very pleased with it, got a great deal on it, paid cash, really nice van. All right, so I had the certificate of title. So I went, did a little research, looking at the laws in Oklahoma, the statutes, looking up words, definitions, who's required to register, when required to register, who cannot register. All right, and I came to the conclusion I just gave you, is that only residents who are doing business in the state of Oklahoma can register a vehicle. So I already knew what I wanted to do. I'd already taken the information and I registered the vehicle with a church. Some of you might be familiar with the Embassy of Heaven Church out there in Oregon, the last I could tell. I've done some videos with Pastor Paul Revere, and they've got some wonderful material. So anyway, I got plates and a registration certificate from the church. And so I knew what the requirements were for registering in the state of Oklahoma. So I created a letter. I wanted to get from them, I wanted to get it in writing that I was attempting to learn how to register it, but they would deny me. That was my objective. I wanted that in writing. So I sent him this letter. I said, hey, I just bought this vehicle. I have this certificate of title. And what I did with the certificate of title is I took a black magic marker. Some of you may have heard the story before, and diagonally from lower left to upper right in big black magic marker, you know, on the certificate of title, it says void if altered. Right. So in the black magic marker, I just wrote in big fat letters, void, across the front. And then on the back, it says do not mutilate. So on the back, I wrote canceled. Okay. I don't want your title insurance anymore. So I sent that in with a letter to the state tax commissioner stating the following, to paraphrase. This van with identification such and such is owned by a church. The operator is not a resident nor doing any business or commercial activity within the state. However, we do use it frequently within the boundaries of Oklahoma, and in an effort to avoid any future inconveniences with local police, I'd like to know how, as a non-resident, non-commercial vehicle, we can get this registered in Oklahoma. Please point me on the path to registration. All right. And of course, I knew the answer in advance. I just wanted to get it in writing. And so I got exactly what I wanted. A week or two later, they sent me a letter back saying, oh, I'm sorry, but you're not able to register that vehicle under those conditions. Perfect. I had my letter. And the second part of the story, the letter came in handy because later that van would be stolen by a common thief. Broke into my apartment, took my keys, went outside. I chased him out of the place without getting into all the details, but a little bit too late. I got out, I was out on the street in my underwear, having, gotten out of bed about 3 a.m, and I see the taillights of my car going down the street. Well, at the time, I lived right in downtown Oklahoma City, and the sheriff's department was 2 blocks this way. The city police were 2 blocks the other way. All right, so I called to report stolen vehicle. Took them at least 45 minutes to get there. I thought maybe, there's enough people around in the area, cops, in the area. I'd say, hey, this is the van that's going down this direction, down this street. See if you can head it off. No, they'll show up at the house maybe 45 minutes to an hour, make a report, and that's about it. So anyway, fast forward 6 weeks later, I was touring the country in an RV, in a motorhome, having a heck of a time. That's a wonderful thing to do if you ever get a chance. But so I had my mail in a package forwarded to me, and I got this notice from an apartment complex stating that, hey, this van has been abandoned in our parking lot. We got your mailing address from some papers that were in the glove box, and you need to come and get your van and pay a storage fee, or we're going to sell it, as an abandoned vehicle. And I go, oh, that's great. So I said, how the heck can I get out of that? Well, I don't want to pay no storage fee for my van that was stolen. I didn't even know where it was. So I figured, well, let me call the police. They've got a stolen vehicle report. Have the police go and get it. So that's exactly what they did. They took a tow truck, got the car, put it in the impound lot. Perfect. Come get the car. Well, not so easy. You can't take a car out of the impound lot unless it's registered to the state. And I had to make several visits back and forth, trying to maybe talk to some other individual who might be more understanding of my situation. So I made a number of different attempts to get it out, and they wouldn't give it to me. And I finally remembered, hey, I got this letter. So I took the letter down. Some old guy was there. I showed it to him, and I said, hey, you can't deprive me of my property by requiring me to do something which is impossible to do. The state tax commission said it's impossible to register this vehicle. All right. And so long as he could pass the buck to the state tax commission, it wasn't his decision. He said, okay, here's the keys, go get your car. And what ticked me off more than anything is I had Kingdom of Heaven license plates on there, and the thief loved those. He took those with him. So anyway, thinking ahead, understanding what the law requires, and putting yourself in position to deal with any future eventualities, understanding the meaning of words is something you can do to start living like a non-citizen. I don't even like to use the term sovereign, because in my mind, governments are sovereign among the family of nations. All right. And then aside from that, really only God is sovereign. God is sovereign over everything. So if I'm not subject to the state, I'm subject to God. So I don't like to call myself sovereign. That doesn't sit well with me. But anyway, so you understand. Right now, a lot of friends of mine in a law club that we had at the time, back in the days in Denver, they would set up a trust, and they would have the car registered in the name of the trust. And we had some fun with that. One guy had a trust in the name of Independence Research Society, AKA IRS. And he he filed doing business as name filing with the county, and filed it as DBA IRS. And so that showed up on the registration form. Cop pulls him over one time, and he says, oh, your car is registered to the IRS. You with the IRS? He says, yeah, you want a 1099? And the cop just says, okay, slow down next time you're coming through the area, and have a good day. And we had all kinds of fun with that. You could come up with all kinds of names, with an acronym, FBI, IRS, DHS, and that's what shows up on your registration paperwork. So you can have fun with that, and it's not registered to your name. Okay, so just some ideas there. All right, so we talked about the passport. And again, if you're standing in front of a judge, they're looking for these hooks to get the jurisdiction on you. So I was in front of a judge one time on a small matter, and they were trying to get jurisdiction. And so they started the questioning. Okay, so Mark, what's your address? Just kind of like an administrative function. We just got to get your address here on the paperwork. What's your address? And I responded, oh, you mean like a permanent address? Yeah. What's your address? And well, I thought about it. I says, really, I've never had a permanent address, and you haven't either, and you never will. You may live in the same house your entire life, but are you going to be there forever? No. When you keel over, they're going to haul your carcass out of there. You're not going to be there anymore. So there is no such thing as a permanent address, if we want to speak truthfully. So no, I don't have a permanent address. Well, Mark, where do you live? I thought, well, I don't mean to be a smart aleck, but the truth is I'm living now, and I'm living here. And so I'm living here. The eyebrows go up. All right, well, where do you take up your housekeeping? Well, I take up my housekeeping wherever I hang my hat for the night. And essentially, I'm a fire-breathing child of God, an ambassador for the kingdom of heaven, and I'm a sojourning pilgrim who has been given dominion over the earth. And so I move around a lot. All right. And you can see this was going absolutely nowhere. And in no time, she had the deputy, the bailiff, escort me out of the courtroom. That was it. Issue was over. Get out of here. Okay. So legal status, it's not only what your papers say, it's what everything in your life says. Okay, so you've got a lot more to consider than just your paperwork, in my opinion. Some of you might have an argument against that. Oh, my paperwork annuls and renounces any and all previous paperwork and this and that. But if it's hanging out there, it's prima facie evidence. All right. Again, in my trial, they wanted to show that I was not really operating as Mark Emery because I had not notified the Social Security Administration of any changes to my status, and that they were trying to show that I was still wanting to get my Social Security benefits. I mean, they were really digging deep, really thinking they were going to outsmart me on this stuff. Well, as I mentioned, I had my own do-it-yourself, notification process. I had already sent affidavits and documents to the Social Security Administration relating to my Social Security number, the SS4 application, and all that. And they didn't know about that. So they bring a witness onto the stand from the Social Security Administration asking all kinds of questions. Well, did Mark ever renounce his benefits or give you a change of name status or, give you any indication that he wasn't interested in receiving benefits? They really wanted to show that I wanted to get Social Security benefits in my full family name. All right. This was their intent. And so the questioning that they asked the witness on the stand from Social Security accomplished their objective. All right, so they had made their point to the jury. But now it's my turn to cross-examine. Well, Mr. So-and-so, while you were looking through my file, did you notice anything else that was in there? Were there any other documents that were in there? Oh, well, yes, there was. Did you have a chance to look at them? And could you tell us, what the general idea and intent was of those documents? Well, from what I could tell, you wanted that you thought the entire application process for the Social Security number was fraudulent, and you wanted nothing more to do with the Social Security Administration, which completely blew the prosecution's questioning and point out of the water. Oh my gosh, I was having so much fun. Again, the things you put on file, they're there. And if it ever comes up to question, all right, that's one hook that I pulled out and threw back, right? They couldn't hook me on that. And that was in an actual court case, felony charges. All right, so many stories. If you haven't done so, you got to get my book, One Free Man's War in the Second American Revolution. I get into a lot of these stories, but we don't have time for all that tonight. So my point is that legal status, it's not only what your papers say, it's what your life says. And so beyond filing papers, you have to deal with all of this prima facie evidence that's out there. And it's not hard. It's just step by step. And, these are the kind of things that we're trying to teach our folks, not only in the NATF, but also in the community support network. Okay. So you really need to be involved on both sides there. Community support network is all about helping people come out of Babylon and get these hooks out of you and creating total independence, and see, the problem is people have fear for getting rid of these comfortable situations that they've gotten comfortable with through their dependence on the state. Registrations, mail, employment, taxes, accounts, registration of your name connected to a street address or whatever. Okay, these are things you can easily get rid of. It's a step-by-step process. It's not hard, but yeah, it does take a little time, a little effort. And as you can tell, once you start seeing results come from all this, you can really start to have a little bit of fun with these people. Okay. Most public servants, I'm telling you right now, including the judges, police officers, prosecutors, administrative blowhards. All right. Most of these people are bluff and bravado, and they're used to getting away with murder because they never come across anyone who can stand up to them or who's willing to stand up to them. Someone who knows their game, someone who knows how to handle themselves, someone who's living like a state citizen or national, someone who knows their stuff and is prepared to deal with it. And I would also add one important point is that none of us really ever feels comfortable in our knowledge. None of us. I feel very inadequate in many instances, despite all my experience. But I'll tell you what, I have strong faith. And the Bible tells us, when you're in front of the Pharisees being persecuted, fear not what to say, for the Holy Spirit will put the words in your mouth. And let me tell you about this experience. And I'll tell you right now, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. I was doing closing arguments in my case, felony charges, jail time. And I hadn't prepared, I was so busy with everything else in the trial And after 4 days, I was totally exhausted. I had not prepared anything for closing arguments, but I remembered that scripture. And I got up there, and if I could say so myself, I delivered a speech in front of that jury that had everyone in that courtroom sitting on the edge of their seat. I would pause at key moments and you could hear a pin drop. And I don't think ever in my life had I ever given a more moving statement. And that comes from the Holy Spirit. And so when you're dealing with this stuff, I wouldn't try it if I were you, if I didn't have a strong relationship with the God inside of me and the Holy Spirit who is sent to help me, because where I fall short, they can pick up. And he that is inside of me is greater than anyone who's out in the world. And that gave me the confidence to stand up against the entire machine who was dead set at putting me down for political reasons. Stood up, actually had a great time in the courtroom. Very relaxed, very intent, focused, speaking with authority over the issues that I was raising, able to come back against them with the list of witnesses they put up on the stand. I gave you just a small sampling. It was amazing. There must have been 20 witnesses they pulled out from God knows where. They really wanted to put me down. And in this particular case, they failed. I got a hung jury. I had at least one or more jurors that stood with me. And all this effort to prosecute me went down the drain at that time. Later, they decided to try it again. You could argue double jeopardy, but they tried it again. This time, they stole my exculpatory evidence, denied me speaking about certain things that were in my favor, in my defense. They basically tied my hands behind my back and tarred and feathered me and threw me in jail for some time. So, but that was all good. You know, all things work for the good to those who love God. That's where I started my book. And you wouldn't have my book if I wasn't, in jail for about a year. Okay, so you're the beneficiary of my jail time. I hope you appreciate it. But no, actually, it was the best. That was the best year of my life for a lot of reasons. So anyway, so just remember when you're dealing with public officials, again, they're all bluff and bravado, most of them. And if you know your stuff, can stand your ground, they will tuck their tails between their legs and run the other direction. Remember the scene in The Wizard of Oz, you know, where the Scarecrow, the Lion, the Tin Man, and Dorothy, they're in the great hall of the wizard, and he's speaking with great authority and fear and thunderous voice. And you know that scene. And then little Toto runs around and pulls back the curtain behind this little booth, and there's this little guy pulling all these levers. That's what our system is. Bunch of scared little nincompoops just following orders, don't really know what they're doing, but they're just doing what they've been told. So they don't have any depth or roots behind what they're doing. And when you do, you have the authority. Okay, so those are the comments that I wanted to make. And I'll open the floor now. If you have something you'd like to add to that or questions, raise your hand. There's a little icon in the lower right that says reactions. You can raise your hand there. That way, if there's more than one at a time, I can call on you. So let's hear from someone in the state assembly. Let's hear about what you're doing. And if you agree or disagree with any of this, Would love to hear from you. Where's James from Washington? I know we got others here.
Good evening.
Yeah, who's this?
This is James.
Oh, hi, James. Very
How are
good.
you?
Good. So what are your thoughts?
In large part, I agree with you, but things have evolved.
As they always do, huh?
Always. The only thing constant in life is change, and boy, on the political side of it, it's moving at light speed these days.
So do you have something to add?
Yeah. On March 24th, America came under the public law. And for everyone, what that means is all this corporate government wrapped around us. Think of it as a foreign-owned donut stand that got nationalized.
Yeah.
And so you're going to be able to go back in and bring everybody under notice that operating under the public law is a much higher standard. Don't be afraid of it. And on top of it, the missing component for the last 160 years has been a court case from 1866 called Milligan Ex parte, 72 US 2. Washington just implemented it on April 23rd, and the lawful court in the land is back in session in Washington.
I've heard of that. So tell us again, what's the gist of Milligan, you said? Ex parte?
Milligan Ex parte, 72 US 2. It's an 1866 court case that was brought before military tribunal. And basically it states that if there's a lawful civilian court in session, Americans can't be brought before a military court or tribunal. So our system courts are limited admiralty courts brought upon land. They've been kicked out of here and they're being given notice here in Washington. We've already given notice to the King County to vacate the King County Courthouse.
Okay, and that notice was basically what? To start, explain that. What did the notice say?
Basically, that's our building. And as a
Okay.
corporate character, you've lost your contract. Cease, desist, and vacate. You have until X date to be out. Otherwise, it's involved in unlawful detainer.
Okay. All right. So what's the drop dead date on the notice?
No, I don't have the notice before me, but I believe it's the end of May.
Ah. All right. So we should see moving vans in front of the buildings.
Well, 3 weeks ago, I was down at the federal courthouse, and of the 6 windows in the main lobby for the clerks, there was one head clerk and one under clerk in the entire building. And there were only 2 court cases scheduled on the docket for the day.
2.
Yep.
And how many courts are in the building? I mean, usually there's a dozen or more.
Well, it's 6 stories, so that goes in there.
Oh, wow. Yikes. Well, that would be a good indication, wouldn't it?
Yep.
See, that's what I've been telling folks, is that the system is crumbling. It's falling down around us. All right. And this is the time for us to stand tall more than ever and be bold, to take the time to learn as much as we can, know our stuff as much as we can, and we are the authority, not only in terms of the political scene, the legal scene here in the States, but also just in terms of having our dominion over the earth, with having that authority that God has put within us. So we need to stand strong and fearless, because as the world is crumbling, society, their Trojan horse is crumbling around them. People are going to freak out, right? There's going to be a lot of chaos. It's going to get ugly. They could start lashing out and doing who knows what. So there's going to be a period of chaos and perhaps even violence, especially now with this Supreme Court situation on Roe v. Wade. So my point is that we, the people who are really the root of America, who have some clue as to what's going on, we need to stand strong and be there to guide these people who really have been lost the whole time and don't know where to go and what to do. All right. And so that's why that I feel the NATF forum is so important, because people can just come, start learning, start seeing things from a different perspective. And I know a lot of other groups are doing other things, and that's all well and good. We're not above or below anybody else. Everybody has their own resources, but we're doing what we can, in the NATF. So in fact, we created the self-governance and common law course at the suggestion of someone who at the time was in the Michigan Assembly. And he thought that would be a good idea for people who are in the assembly to get additional training on the history and legal foundational basis of, our authority as governors, lawmakers. We are the law. I've had some people laugh at us. Oh, NATF, you guys, you're no law enforcement. You're a bunch of, that's a fraud. I go, excuse me? They said, oh, you're not a law enforcement agency. And I says, you're exactly right. We are not agents. We are the authority. We don't have delegated authority. We have organic authority. All right. So if you want agents, go talk to the agents, but we are the authority. And there's nothing further. There's nothing more true than that. Okay. So anyway, just my thoughts on that. Anything else, James?
Well, at this point in time.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here. Appreciate your input, feedback. And yeah, I was talking to another assembly guy in Ohio about these notices that went out, and they went out all across the country. And be interesting to follow that. In fact, I've got copies of them. I just have to unbury them from my email, pull them out, and put them aside so I can take a closer look. Very interesting. Very interesting. A lot of times they ignore this stuff, but there's going to come a point in time when there's going to be an accounting. Right. And whatever we do that's going on the record, don't be dismayed or discouraged if you feel like it's just being ignored and nothing is happening. Because I truly believe that what goes on the record stays on the record and will come to light at some point in time. And so by simply getting things on the record is a job that we can feel very comfortable in doing, and knowing that we are setting the record. And the day of reckoning is coming, and I think it's coming very soon. God's hand is at work. He's tearing down all the lies and the bullshit and the fraud and the corruption. It's all coming down. So we need to be there when it does, in whatever capacity that we have. And so that's the intent of NATF. For those of you that are not real close with us, join our forum. I just put the link in the chat. Join our forum and just tell us what you're doing. Share what you're up to, what your group is doing. We want to collaborate. Okay. So that's the deal. All right, so anybody else? Comments, questions, issues, reactions to tonight? Let's go to Karen. Hi, Karen. Karen Martin.
Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
Great, thanks.
I have been really sick since December and having all kinds of medical tests. So this is the first time I've been with y'all on a conference for a while.
Oh,
But
I hear
I
that.
wonder, that's okay. One of the tumors has magically disappeared.
Yeah?
And yeah, and so God is on my side. But I wonder if you would be interested in what I suggest for people to do when they're faced with a court case.
Okay. Tell us.
A corporation cannot talk to a living man or a living woman. And the territorial government has given the municipal government our upper and lowercase names to deal with as a corporation. What I have done in my case is you look up on the Dun and Bradstreet website the Dunn's number, which shows that whoever it is who's come against you is a corporation,
Uh-huh.
because all of those, every US agency is a corporation, whether it's tax, police, courts, whatever.
Yeah, we've done that. We've
After,
entered that into the record on one of our court cases.
well, after you do that, you go to Moody's Analytics and you look up the same organization, which will give you a description of what they are. And what government employees will do is fill out that they're an industry, which is government. That's wrong. They are a business, which is industry. And Moody's Analytics will show what they serve doing, and it will say providing government services. That goes back to common law, the 19 enumerated services that they are hired to provide. Once you have both of those sites documented and you turn it in to the court and you say, you have no right to bring me under your jurisdiction, you rebut and deny all of the presumptions of law, the assumption of guilt, the assumption of implied authority, and basically tell them if they don't drop the case, then you're going to prosecute them for violating your due process and common law. American common law is different. It's based on the Bible, and you can mention to them the same way in the Bible where it says somebody steals one goat and they have to return 3 goats, or they steal 1 sheep and they have to return 7 sheep.
Yeah.
There is a multiplier in common law. So if each of your show cause is $10,000, say you have 5, that's 50,000. If you use the multiplier,
7.
you can get, okay, I can't multiply or add either one, but you multiply that times your 50,000, and you've got money coming from both ends. Plus, in common law, there is no immunity when an officer oversteps his authority. When an official oversteps the authority of the government office, supposedly government office, then he is no longer protected, and you can sue him personally and take his car, his house, his boat, his airplane, whatever. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, well, that's very good. And that sounds right in line with what is absolutely correct and well-founded. The problem that we've been finding so far is that the Brotherhood protect themselves. So to bring an action like that against another judge, for one judge to rule against one of their brothers, is the issue. However, combining what you've just said with what I've just said about the fact that setting the record is important and that the walls are coming down, this will all be evidence at some point in time. Okay, so if we don't get immediate relief, we can set the record and just know that we've done our job, because nothing goes unseen. The Bible tells us that in the end days, all things that are hidden will be uncovered and known. All right, so regardless, I do believe that that's a process that we need to perfect, and get it on the record. And at some point in time, these corrupt judges are coming down. They'll be kicking and screaming the whole way, and won't that be a show? We'll just love to see that. So yeah, that's great. Good info. Thank you very much, Karen. And good to hear from you. God bless you and your recovery process. Okay, let's go to Private K. How are you, Private K? Calling Private K. You can unmute yourself, I think. He was here a minute ago, and now I lost him.
Yeah, sorry, I had to get back to the screen. Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, thank you. I'm up from Canada here. We just found out last couple of days that they're refusing documentation into the courts. Even the lawyers are having an issue filing documents, and I don't know whether it's because it's all related to all the trucker stuff, people filing documentation. So if they can't prosecute you, then there's delay in the courts. But if that gentleman that mentioned that court case, if he could type that into the chat room, that would be great. I didn't catch all of the code sections that he mentioned. And I'm just wondering if we use that, because Canada is a political subdivision of the United States under the SEC guidelines and prospectus. I'm wondering how we would utilize that to our advantage up here to cease and desist prosecutions. We have used the securities intermediary thing with the courts. They don't like that because it says in their prospectus that the Attorney General actually, and there's a couple of lawyer firms for each state or province, that they're the securities intermediary. So they're the ones that are liable for settling the debt, right? So we direct them to that. And under your 31 USC 5118 and 18 US Code Section 8, it says that the debt obligations are those of the United States. So what are you doing coming after me for the debt when it's the United States debt, correct? So, so we're just wondering, how do we handle courts now? They're dragging us into court. Some of us, I'm helping a lady right now that's got a lot of criminal charges and stuff. So we're doing some 1099-C debt cancellation stuff and doing a tax charge for taxable benefit against these individuals. So it's a private tax assessment against them for taking a labor benefit that they haven't paid for. So that's kind of how we're handling the situation on the private side. They like you say, they don't like to charge their own kind because it's all a brotherhood.
Right.
And yeah, so that's how we're dealing with it. And those securities that they issue for the birth certificate, they're not even issuing those anymore up here. I don't know what it's like down there, but because we're holding them liable, it's their issue, their signature is on it, and they're custodians. So we use that successfully several times, but they don't like that, right? They sort of just ignore that. So my question again goes back to, how do we use that court case to our advantage, and how do we move forward with this lawful courts enforcement? Because we could use some help up here. So
you're saying that the courts are not allowing supporting documentation in support of a brief?
They're not allowing anyone that comes in as a man or as an agent of the fiction. They're not allowing those documents to be notarized. So the lawyers are making legal determinations prior to anything being filed into court. So they're just outright refusing notarizing documents. So we've gone to notarizing our own, because under the Bible you can do two witnesses.
Yeah, 2 witnesses is enough.
Witnesses, yep. And there's also a citation, can't remember what it is, but in case you can't get a notary, then you can notarize your own. yeah, the courts don't recognize the living. Yes, you're correct. But if you come in as an agent, they're even refusing that stuff now. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah. So that just happened this week. We found out.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm
Well,
just
just a
wondering.
knee-jerk reaction. Yeah, if the courts don't recognize the living, then they can't hold you liable for anything. You know, how do you communicate with them if they don't accept any of your documentation, you know?
Yeah. So
Uh,
we've done an express trust. That's one of the solutions that we've done is, okay, you want to take control of the court matter. Well, then you've volunteered as the trustee. So we've done a certificate of trust to appoint them the trustee or accept their role of trusteeship to settle the debt and matter. That's what we're trying to do
Yeah.
now as an alternative.
yeah, since the defendant is the estate, in fact, and you won't deal with me, then I'll have to put you in as fiduciary to handle this on my behalf. Right?
Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah.
express trust? Yeah.
Express trust. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Well, I don't know. It's so bad. I mean, all you can do is laugh at these guys. I mean, they're just so far out of whack. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. But yeah, it sounds like you've got a good handle on things up there. I was curious as to what's happening in Canada after, you know, it's been a couple months now since the big event. And
Well, there's so the truckers are filing all these cases, but the lawyers are taking money and then they're not processing the court filings, and so they're being held up. So the courts have been swamped with all these counterclaims, and so right now there's no remedy or relief.
well, and that's just it. That's the only thing lawyers are good for, taking your money. They're very good at that. They're excellent at that.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I haven't found one yet that's worth a crap when it comes to really defending your rights.
Yeah,
Right?
so I'd love to hear a little bit more, and maybe I can send whoever that was
James.
my private email. Was it James or is it John? Who was
Yeah, he put the case. Oh, John, yeah.
Was it John or James? Because maybe I'll
John,
send them my
John.
email. John, okay, send them my email because I'd like to inquire a little bit more about how do we use that to our advantage.
Yeah, you can send a private message
Yeah.
here. But yeah, first thing is just read the case. Read the case, get a sense for what it's all about, how it might apply, and how you might use it. You know, read you know, if it's a Supreme Court case, then you can read the opinions, both for and against, you know, and get some ideas out of the opinions that were written on it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first thing.
But if you're under military martial, does that not nullify that then? Because it's under military, temporary military provisions?
Well, you could say that, and it might be true, but you know, people rely too much on these things because, you know, we're in a position now where anything goes. I mean, you might think you find something in the law books and go, oh, here's the answer, but they don't care. You know, we live in a lawless society, right? All you can do is expose the trespass against your rights, due process, expose it, put it on record, go after them personally. Like you said, they lose their immunity once they step outside their scope of authority, and start going after them personally. As a matter of debt, they've trespassed upon your rights. Those rights have value. That value can be reflected in dollars, and start a debt action. All right, we have some training on that for notice and demand, notice of grievances, and demand for remedy. Either fix the problem or pay me my fees. It's one or the other. So I know it's easy to say and it's more to do, but I think we all need to start thinking in those terms. You know, how do you deal with tyranny? Go after their pocketbook on a personal basis. They have to feel the pain. All right. So for whatever that's worth. And then we've dealt into that quite a fair amount here in NATF in the forum. So again, if you're not in the forum, you need to get there. I post the link in up above. So all right, well, thank you very much, Private. I wish you the best. Sounds like you're on top of things up there in Canada, at least to some degree.
Yeah, hopefully.
So check in with us and keep us posted, will you?
Sure. Thank you.
All right. So James, I'll get back to you in a minute. How about Joseph Salazar? Hi, Joseph.
There we go. I love talking on mute.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you so much for putting this together. So this is my first time being a part of the group, and I know you posted a link, I usually just said, to a forum. And I've been exposed to a lot of the national, I don't know, just information. I'm not really sure what's true or what's not true, just trying to make heads or tails at this point. But some of my concerns, and hopefully I could find more information, at least on your forum. And I'm not too familiar with this platform, so if you could post it in the chat, I could at least see it in the chat. I'm not sure where else it's posted, like maybe the meeting notes or something. I don't know how to access those.
No, it's in the chat. What are you looking for?
Like how to get to the forum, I guess, to get more information.
You'll have to scroll up and look for me, I guess. How do they have me listed? Mark Emery, I suppose.
I'll look through the chat again. But I guess some of my concerns is I operate as an electrician, a state licensed electrician, and I use several different financing options to fund a lot of the projects that I work on for my customers.
Oh, okay.
And so I know that a lot of these different products that I'm offering and tools that I'm offering are, you know, re-admitting this citizenship title and things that I'm really not that familiar with. So I'm not speaking from experience or anything, but these are the concerns. I still want to be able to operate. I still want to be able to offer services to my customer. This is how I make a living right now.
Yeah.
So I've looked into briefly, like maybe creating the company as a trust instead, but then I run into the roadblock of still operating as a licensed state electrician for my customers. How do I work out of that? Or I also have a bond within the state, and then I also have insurance, again, also listed through the state, so I can maintain a current license. And then I also have vehicles and equipment and things like that. So
yeah,
these were some of the questions and the concerns that I had. And then if I could do away with all of that, I could. You know, if you told me, hey, well, you need to just do away with all that, I can. So the next question that I have is, I have money in stocks and in equities. And so how would I operate doing trading if I did live trading, you know, day trading, stuff like that, within these means where I could make money through the markets? So those were kind of my questions. I know a lot of people have been giving information today, but in my case, I'm very novice. So those are my questions.
Well, that's a pretty big can of worms to open up right there. But the good news is that's exactly what we're dealing with in the community support network. It's kind of an offshoot of NATF, where we've got a whole separate resource center geared towards helping people come out of Babylon, right? Come out of her, my people, do not partake in her sins, so you do not share in her plagues. And believe me, those plagues are started. So the focus and emphasis is on creating alternatives to those things that you rely on right now, okay? And there are alternatives. We can't get into it tonight. That's, a lot of detail there. But if you join the forum, be sure to include the community support network. That's an additional feature for $5 a month. And you'll have a lot of resources in that regard to kind of start helping you along those lines. In fact, that's been my area of specialty for the last number of years. My background and training is in international business and finance. And I've had companies around the world, still do to some degree, and have created alternative infrastructures for dealing with finances and situations like that. So just understand it is a doable thing, and there's ways of dealing with it. So we'd have to pick up on that at another time, but I'll leave you with those words of encouragement. Fair enough?
Perfect. Thank you so much. I was able to click on the link, so I'll join later today. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so let's go to James Brimage. Come on down.
You just covered some banking, so I'd like to update everyone.
Good.
There was a bank formed last summer called the Global Family Commercial Bank. And in the American scene, there used to be trade banks, and they were gobbled up in the 1860s, wandering up into the turn of the 19th century. The United States of America, unincorporated, has formed something called the American States and Nations Trade Bank. It is meant only for the living being to have an account with. The Federal Reserve has been broken up. The IMF has gone bankrupt. The World Bank lost its license to function. And right now, the fiduciary of the United States of America, unincorporated, is in control of 1,181,000,000,000+ metric tons of gold, covering over 200 nations.
Seriously.
Seriously.
Oh my goodness.
Venezuela, as well as South Africa, is already in possession and being issued what we call a vendor card. America will probably start getting theirs about the 1st of July, if you're documented in the land and soil.
Okay.
The national debt actually is the American people's national credit, because the accounting was not properly done for the last 160 years. This vendor card is going to tap into what's owed to us as a credit. Unbeknownst to everyone, dating back into the 1860s, labor bonds were taken out on every successive generation. Those bonds, as well as the birth certificate bond, as well as the Social Security account, has been seized upon. And this vendor card will allow you to take all of your bills that come into your all caps or municipal, Puerto Rican transmitting utility, special purpose vehicle person, and just instantaneously offset them. People have heard about the black card and the A4V program. Well, under House Joint Resolution 192, Public Law 73-10, and codified in the back end of Title 50, FDR put a remedy in place for the American people. And every state used to have a federal window where we could submit these bills to get taken care of. Well, in 1921, when they started issuing our birth certificates to us, and they were kidnapping us out of the land and soil jurisdiction, they set in motion the rollover of the American Treasury in 1924. And every last bit of this was so criminal. If they didn't give us a remedy, they would be eligible to be hung. So corrections
let
coming,
me just
folks.
add, a couple of years ago, one of our members in the law club sent me a letter that they received from someone who was trying to collect a debt. And they hadn't had much luck collecting this debt from this person. And so they got this, second or third letter or whatever. And it said, if you don't pay, we're going to take this to the Treasury offset program. And my reaction was send them a letter back and says, well, please do that. Please send it to the Treasury offset program and offset this debt there. You don't need me. So, I mean, that tells you something, doesn't it?
Sure does.
And this was a couple of years ago. So, not real reason.
Obligations anyways, under the new money.
Yeah. So it's a fascinating thing. There's big changes upon us, not coming, but they're here. So stay tuned. Stay tuned. So, okay, well, thank you. Let's go back to private K.
Hi, yeah, just there was a lady in the chat about didn't believe that the debt was our credit, but when you are the guarantor for the national debt, as it says in one of your law books down there, I pull up the citation if somebody wants it, but there's a mortgage on all of the property and homes of Americans as guarantors, and that's why they come after you, right? And plus you're using fractional reserve currency, which is copywritten, that's their property. So there's an excise tax on that. So when you act as subrogee, you have subrogation rights and you stand in place of the creditor of the as the creditor of the nation, because you've backed your labor and your property and your essence from that. You are the substance, because the Queen owns 16% of the land resource. So there's nothing really to collateralize the debt other than your labor and whatever you produce. So, and I think there actually Clinton has an executive order, I think it's 13909 or something, that says we're human capital for the provisions of the United States. So it is our credit when we pay anything with our substance, because it is fictional reserve currency, we become the subrogee. And again, you become the creditor in that instance. So you're entitled to discharge that off, whatever remedies or reliefs are available for that. So that's what I wanted.
Yeah, it's fascinating. People often say, well, they just create money out of thin air. Well, no, they don't. They create it using your labor as collateral, your labor and property.
Yeah, so there's a mortgage that's placed on the birth certificate. That's my partner used to trade with not traders, but work with traders, and so they can fractionally allonge those birth certificates or those instruments, and they could pay the national debt down in a week if they wanted to, but they don't do that, right? So there's bond trading, and that's what I believe is happening with China, because they are one of the trading houses, along with Luxembourg and the Euroclear, Eurostream, those kinds of things. They're the ones that instrumentize those things on the SEC market. So because we've reached a debt ceiling, they need some other way to collateralize the debt. And that's what these new COVID IDs are, because they can't use the birth certificates anymore. So they needed another certificate to replace that. So they're trying to restart the debt system, or debt slavery system, in this new certificate, this COVID ID thing. That's what I think anyway. So
Really?
That's what the Zim bonds are going to be for.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe has all the minerals you need to back the money.
Well, you can actually create your own silver bond. Instead of using your body and your essence, create silver bond from the earth and use that as collateral, right? Part of the minerals to discharge your debt, because you're still that available to you.
Yeah, there's no lack of money out there.
It seems like a reach to me, unless you can claim it and own it, sell it. I don't see how that works, but anyway,
okay.
I think we're going to see a lot come under the surface here in the next few weeks or months. So hold on to your seats. So thank you Thank you, Private. Sounds like a TV series, Private K. All right, folks. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground tonight. I hope we picked up a few gems along the way. Glad to see all of you. Be sure that you plug into the NATF forum. If you're taking notes and missed the link I put in, it's members.natf.world. And I highly recommend you get one of the larger size bundles that has, we're talking larger size, we're talking what, $25, gives you access to the main NATF forum, the VIP supporters forum, community support network, which is all about coming out of Babylon. And we also have a self-governance and common law course. So that's the Daddy Warbucks package is just loaded with information. So one way or the other, we'd love to see you there. Start sharing information. It's a lot easier to look at written posts. A lot of these things you put in chat, it's like water under the bridge. They're gone quickly once it gets scrolled up. So at least in the forum, we can save important information and share it with each other. So there we go. Thank you, folks. We'll call it a wrap.